Hello everyone, Jose and Nick here, coming back to you from Moneyline MMA. We have another week of exciting fights. We have UFC 275, Teixeira versus Jiri Prochazka. This event's going to be the 6th UFC pay-per-view event of this year, and it's going to take place in Singapore Indoor Stadium in Kallang, Singapore on June 11th through pay-per-view at 9 p.m. Central District Time. And for the first fight of the night, it's going to be a welterweight bout between Della Maddalena versus Ramazan Emeev. The second fight of the night is going to be a flyweight bout between Rogerio Bontorin versus Manel Kape. The third fight of the night is going to be a women's strawweight bout between Weili Zhang versus the returning Joanna Jedrzejczyk. The co-main event is going to be for the women's flyweight strap, and it's going to be Valentina Schevchenko versus Taila Santos. And of course, the main event is going to be for the light heavyweight strap. It's the champion Teixeira versus the challenger Jiri Prochazka. Okay, so for the first fight of the night, it's a welterweight bout between Della Maddalena versus Ramazan Emeev. Maddalena right now, he is the betting favorite at minus 136, while Ramazan Emeev is the betting underdog at plus 108. Right now, Ramazan Emeev is 20-5. He's coming off a split decision loss to Danny Roberts off at UFC Fight Night 195, Ladd versus Dumont, back of last year, 2021. He was riding a 2-fight win streak. He came unanimous decision win. He got a decision split win. And then after that, of course, he was on the wrong end of a decision split loss. Many people thought he actually won that fight. While Della Maddalena, he's right now currently uprising. Right now, he's 11-2. He had a phenomenal unanimous decision win against Angie Lusa for the Dana White's Contender Series back in 2021. And earlier this year in January, he beat Pete Rodriguez via TKO in the first round. He had an impressive debut, and right now you have a young challenger at 25 versus somewhat of a UFC vet in Ramazan Emeev. This is going to be a fun one for the books, Nick.
Yeah, this is one of those classic examples, Jose, of a young and up-and-coming guy with a little less experience coming to fight one of those UFC vets. Might be coming off of a loss, but as you stated, these are some really close fights that he's been in. And it was fascinating to me that all the fights that Ramazan Emeev has been with the UFC have ended in decision. That's 7 fights, and most of them going to unanimous decision in Emeev's favor. But that being said, a couple questionable split decision choices where he lost to Danny Roberts. I think this is interesting because Della Maddalena came off of, like you said, a good decision win against Lusa, and then absolutely decimated Pete Rodriguez in UFC 270. So he's gotten his UFC debut out of the way, and his stats are still kind of inflated when you look at some of the stats here on UFCstats.com. So it's hard to quantify exactly how much power and how reckless he can be against more of a seasoned, grizzled veteran instead of the guys from the Contender Series or someone like Pete Rodriguez, who has no other experience in the UFC otherwise anyway. So I'm not seeing any real high-end competition that Maddalena has taken out. And this is not to say that Emeev is himself top end competition, but having been a grizzled veteran in the UFC, he knows what he's doing, and he takes all these fights to decision. So he's able to keep up with everybody he's fighting. I'm going to be very interested to see if Maddalena has the power to knock him out, or if this is going to go all the way to decision. But either way, I think it also might factor in how good Emeev can take this to the ground. He has a 2.29 takedown average per 15 minutes. So I'm fascinated to see if he does start to feel the pressure from Maddalena. He feels like he might get that knockout blow. He's going to go take it to the ground. Maddalena, though, does have a really good 75% takedown defense. I just haven't seen the proof that he takes he defends a takedown specialist from doing a great takedown attempt. So that being said, it's really tough. I do like to lean towards guys who do have the ability to take it to the ground and have that ground advantage, but I really just think Maddalena might have that advantage striking. so much so that it overshadows whatever advantage Emeev has on the ground.
Yeah, Nick, I agree. It's kind of scary seeing Jack Della Maddalena's impressive 91 finish rate. He's got so many TKOs and KOs on his record. While Emeev, Ramazan Emeev, he's mostly coming off. He's been a decision king right now. He's 5-2 in the UFC, and all wins and losses have been via decision. Even a couple of split decisions in there, and this is a fight where he knows where he needs to come in and really close that gap and use that Dagestani wrestling. He has good takedown game. He has good takedown defense, and he has 45% significant strike rate right now. He does observe also 2.02 strikes per minute. So Maddalena will be getting in there. He's going to keep his distance. But that being said, he wants to keep his distance to avoid any takedowns from Ramazan Emeev. That being said, Ramazan Emeev, he knows what's the obvious right here, and that's that Jack can end the fight within the first 3 rounds. And I think Ramazan Emeev is going to have to use his veteran UFC IQ, his experience to kind of weather that storm and survive all 3 rounds. If this fight can go to the decision, I'm going to go Ramazan Emeev. So that's why I'm going to go for this fight. I'm going to go for the 35-year-old Ramazan Emeev. Yes, Jack is younger, more youthful, and he has a lot going for him. He has a high finish rate, and it's scary. But that being said, I still want to see him be more tested. And I think this will be his biggest challenge thus far. A guy that is not as easy to put out. A guy that's going to keep coming at you and put pressure on. And that being said, I do think Ramazan could, if he can survive the first round and coast through the second, get more comfortable there. I see a decision win in the 3rd round for Ramazan Emeev.
Yeah, fair enough, Jose. I was just looking and I was really curious because in part of my decision with this fight, I was wondering, how impactful that stand-up game that I was mentioning earlier was. And Tapology has Emeev's reach to be 68.5 inches, and UFC Stats has it at 76 inches. I'm really not quite sure how that ridiculous discrepancy happens. You don't just grow arms and limbs that are that long in the span of a few months or years. So I'm not really quite sure how that got to be so different. But I was at first considering, because both have Maddalena's reach at 73 inches. So that seems to be consistent. And I was going with the impression that Emeev's reach was 68.5. And I really think a 4.5 inch reach advantage would prove to be pretty devastating for a guy like Emeev and almost force him to resort taking Maddalena down. So I'm going to lean on Emeev's arms not being as long as UFC Stats says. I'm going to say Maddalena gets this. I will even go so far as to say that he knocks Emeev out. He's going to show him who's boss, and it'll be within the under 2.5 rounds. You take Maddalena by KO.
I like that pick, Nick. You guys, you heard it there. Nick, he goes for Maddalena. He goes for him finishing it within the first 2.5 rounds. I got Emeev finishing it most likely unanimous decision.
And for the second fight of the main card for UFC 75, we've got a flyweight bout between Rogerio Bontorin and Manel Kape. Bontorin is a plus 190 underdog, with Kape being the minus 250 favorite in this flyweight bout. Jose, I'm really curious to see how this one's going to play out. We've got a guy who's coming off 2 very brief first round knockouts within the first minute of each fight. He fought 4 times in 2021 and was actually 2-2 in those 4 fights. But considering the latter of those 2 fights were fast, decisive knockouts against Ode Osborne and Zalgis Zhumagulov, that really sprung him into the what have you done recently for me category, in which people go wild for the man. So it's been really fascinating to see just how fast the public can turn on a guy, and he can now be a minus 250 favorite against a UFC veteran who has seen the likes of Raulian Paiva, Ray Borg, Cara France, who's now challenging We Brandon Royval. I mean, the list goes on in terms of the top end talent that Rogerio Bontorin has seen in the ring. So it's really fascinating to see him be an underdog. Granted, Bontorin is coming off a tough streak of 3 straight losses since 2020 and a fight that he technically won against Matt Schnell, but I believe he was overweight and did not make weight for that fight, and therefore on the books it shall be listed as a no contest, I believe. So in all reality, he has not fairly won a fight since 2019, which does make me lean the other way in the sense of he hasn't done anything for us lately to make me think that he's worthy of putting any money on. So that's to me what makes this fight really interesting. Will a guy who's on fire in the past year he's fought in a total of 46 seconds in the last 2 fights, or are we going to go with someone who's been on a tough streak, but has that top end experience?
Yeah, Nick, that is something seems to be happening a lot. Is these older vets right now? They're getting kind of, and it sucks because he's only 30, but they're not catching waves. And then next thing you know, UFC starts pairing them with these young guys that are getting building up some momentum, and it just kind of shows you where they're looking at shake up the division in terms of are these guys that have been in the picture? Are they just kind of now fading out and make room for these new guys coming up? And it's a tough matchup seeing Rogerio Benatorin. Him coming off multiple losses, especially that KO by Kai Kara France in the first round back at UFC 259. They're pairing this guy up with who has 2 first round a KO via flying knee and then a TKO as well within the first round. And that last fight against Halagas Homagalov, oh my goodness, he just started throwing punches and haymakers, just a fast combination, one after the other. It was insane. That stoppage, phenomenal. And if he can put that type of pressure against Rogerio Benatorin, I think it can be an early night. I think it's no question that why he's the major favorite right here in this fight at minus 250. Um, he's got leg power. He's also got advantages in other areas. I mean, they're both 5'5", but man, their reach, he has a 1 inch reach advantage, but his leg reach, he's got 3.5 leg reach advantage. I think, he's going to keep his distance, but come in with power whenever he does. And he has thick legs. So I know he's probably going to be trying to chop away at the feet. These guys are, they're going for either finishers, they don't, they're pretty well rounded in terms of their records, but these guys, Rogerio, I don't think he's going to get a submission on Kape in this fight. I just don't see him taking his back. I don't see him wearing him down and turning him out on the ground and taking grappling control over Kape. I think Kape is going to be too powerful for him. I think he's going to shake him off, and I do think he's going to be throwing haymakers and ending in an early night. I just don't see, even Kape. I just don't even think Kape would be in that much interested taking him to the ground as well. Kape is a tough dude. He has 4.59 absorbed strikes per minute, but he throws back too. And Rogerio Benatorin, he's technical and slower, but I think his fight IQ is a little more high up there. But again, he can be caught lacking. He really can. Check him out. Like again, Kai Kara France, first round KO. And then he's been trying to come back in the last fight via split decision loss. Still, that wasn't enough to get the win. I kind of sway with the public opinion on this and going from Manel Kape via KO or TKO within the 2.5 rounds.
Yeah, that's totally fair, Jose. I like your point about Bontorin not really wanting to take this to the ground, or maybe not even just being able to, even if he does want to. I think Kape is a really tough guy to take down, 80% takedown defense in 4 UFC fights. So I think at this point, we can understand that Kape isn't going to be taken down necessarily that easily. His real disadvantage might be throwing big haymakers and getting tired in the latter ends of the third round. But I think that is a great bet. I'm definitely picking Kape, and I'd love to see him knock out Bontorin within those 2.5 rounds.
All right, Nick. And now here we go on to one of the more exciting fights of the night. We have a rematch between the returning Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang. Right now, Joanna Jedrzejczyk is the underdog at plus 142, while Weili Zhang is the betting favorite at minus 182. It's been a minute since we've seen Joanna Jedrzejczyk, Nick. We have not seen her since her split decision loss back at UFC 248 against Weili Zhang. It's been March of 2020, a little over 2 years, and I'm nothing but excited to see Joanna return. Besides that, everyone knows she was the queen of the strawweight division at one point. She lost her championship to Rose Namajunas and has been on some win-losses since then. While Weili Zhang, she herself is coming off a couple losses to Rose Namajunas. And before that, she was just on a tear going through the strawweight division. This is going to be a fun one. I truly believe we may have another fight of the night and fight of the year contender here on our hands, Nick.
Very well could be, Jose. Like you said, it's been a while, and her last, Jen Jacek's last fight was against when she had that split decision loss to Weili. So it'll be interesting to see what she can do coming back. I think she clearly has this striking advantage. It's not a massive gap because Weili was able to land a lot of strikes in their last fight, but I think it's pretty well understood that Joanna's going to have more ability to strike and potentially. I don't know about knockouts. See, that's the thing with Joanna. She doesn't typically have that knockout power. She's gotten knockouts against Jessica Penne back in 2015, but I'm just not that impressed. I don't think she's going to be able to get a knockout at this stage. I think at this point it's going to be one of the longer fights. I would, without a doubt, lean on the over on the rounds with this fight. I think it will likely go to another decision. It's just a matter of Weili's ability to take the fight to the ground. She tried multiple times in their last fight, was able and was only successful one of her 8 takedown attempts on Joanna. So will she be able to sharpen that side of her game a little bit and maybe land a couple of more takedowns to get that ground control time if she feels threatened on the feet? That would definitely lend her in much more in favor of having the chance to win this fight. But regardless, Weili's also been able to beat some of the other top end competition in this division. She's also, just as Joanna, lost to Rose a couple times, but Rose herself, as most of these female fighters have shown, they can be up and down and have their good nights and bad nights. So it can be really hard to tell and get consistency out of some of these fighters. But regardless, it's going to be a tale of how often this fight goes to the mats, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agreed, Nick. I do believe Weili Zhang, she probably still is training with Henry Cejudo, working on her wrestling. I know a lot of people were disappointed not to see as much of it used last time. So if she can, really up her wrestling game and bring Joanna to the floor, I do think she can coast her way to a victory. It's hard to say with Joanna though. She's taken, a layoff too. She has just taken some time off, just vacation, let her body and mind relax and heal. Weili Zhang, she's been just pretty active during that time. And even that being said, you're right. It is pretty hard to see what you're going to get out of these girls come this fight night. I would love to see Joanna Jedrzejczyk come back to her old prime form and be on a tear again, but that may not be the case. I think Weili Zhang is too tough. She absorbs more hits per minute against Joanna Jedrzejczyk. She has a 4.3 absorbed hits per minute compared to Joanna Jedrzejczyk's 3.08. And for that split decision, a lot of people had Joanna Jedrzejczyk win that split decision loss against Weili Zhang back in 2020. It's hard to say what other people thought because like Joanna Jedrzejczyk did look like she had that huge hematoma. Her head was swollen and it did look like she took a lot of damage. But when you go look back at the score sheets, you see that she did actually have a lot more significant strikes in some of those rounds. So you could have had a good argument that she should have won that fight. Her fights are her punches are not as strong as Weili Zhang. Weili Zhang definitely throws a lot more power behind her hits and her leg kicks as well. Joanna, she's more of a high volume puncher. She kind of reminds me of like the female Nick Diaz. She'll just be throwing a bunch of punches for days and then they'll add up. They will just slowly add up until, the light punches really just start to hurt and they just are everything. That's the only way I can see her really winning this fight against Weili Zhang is just coming in and throwing a high volume. But Weili Zhang, we've seen her do the exact same thing against Jessica Andrade. That's something pretty much Joanna needs to expect is just hard pressure forward from Weili Zhang. Joanna has great wrestling defense as well. And that being said, Weili Zhang needs to come in with stronger wrestling. I think, and like you said, it's gonna be battled on the ground as well. I think it's gonna be a big kickboxing fight as well. So if it's gonna be one, it's gonna have to be on the ground. On the feet, it's almost 50-50. A lot of people would like to go with Joanna being the more dominant one on the feet as well. But Weili Zhang actually has a longer leg reach, surprisingly. And but in terms of reach advantage, arm reach, Joanna's got that advantage. But Weili Zhang is her speed and toughness compares just to Joanna's. It really is a 50-50 draw here. But that being said, I would have to go with the one that was more, again, my recency bias as always. I'm going to go with Weili Zhang. She was the more recent champ. She does have that win over Joanna, and she's just been more active than Joanna. Joanna comes from a great camp, but so does Weili Zhang. So for this fight, I would love to see Joanna make a comeback. If anything, I almost want to stay away from this fight, and she could be my underdog. But that being said, like if I were to choose one, I guess I would have to go with Weili Zhang. But again, do not sleep on Joanna.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't think anyone is going to necessarily sleep on Joanna. I think she's proven herself in multiple of her belt defenses. Used to be the queen of the division, like you mentioned. It's just a matter of what will she be like coming off of those couple of years off. And I think she's still going to be a pretty formidable opponent. So either way, that does make me hesitate, no matter which side I'm going on this fight. I'm looking right now, and it looks like you can find the over 2.5 rounds on this fight at around minus 263. So I definitely would explore taking that option because I just don't see either of these two knocking each other out. There's a potential for submission, but in all likelihood, I really think this fight at least goes into the later third round. So to me, it's a safe bet to go over 2.5 rounds, and I'm gonna lean Weili Zhang with the pick at minus 184, and consider we'll consider putting her in the parlay, but that might have to be one of the higher risk options, as I'm just not quite as confident. You never know with Jedrzejczyk, like you said, if she's able to land 200 strikes and the 201st one just hurts another way, that kind of knocks down Weili Zhang and it just wins it out. That could outright win Joanna around, which could win her the fight. So that makes me nervous, but I'm leaning Weili.
There you guys have it. Both Nick and I for Weili Zhang.
All right, for the co-main event of UFC 275, we've got Valentina Shevchenko, the multiple-time flyweight women's champion, taking on Taila Santos, the challenger. Of course, Valentina Shevchenko is the favorite at minus 720, the heaviest favorite on this card, with Santos a modest plus 450 underdog. I think we can all understand the reasoning for that spread, as Valentina Shevchenko has been on a ridiculous tear, winning 8 fights in a row, with 7 of those being championship fights. She has continued to prove every time she steps on the mat that she is the best women in the flyweight division. So that being said, it's looking bleak for Santos. I think that's no offense to Taila Santos. She's had 19-1 record in pro fighting, which is incredible. I'm just not quite sure she has seen the high level competition that Shevchenko will bring. She being Santos has fought Joanne Wood and submitted her in the first round, which is pretty impressive. But outside of that, she did win a unanimous decision against Jillian Robertson and Molly McCann in previous 2020 fight nights. But I'm just not seeing anything decisive enough to say that she is the flyweight champion of the world over someone like Shevchenko. I think she's the ideal, like, this fight's going to happen now, and then in 2 or 3 years, when she's gained some more experience and fought some other big names in this division, then they rematch. And at that point, I could see Santos maybe having that experience behind her and the chip on her shoulder per se to be able to go in there and potentially take the belt. But I just don't know if Shevchenko is going to be taken down at this point. She is just on a rampage, Jose. What do you think?
Yeah, Nick, I agree. It's I think really no question why a lot of people view Valentina as the heavy favorite in this matchup. As you mentioned, yeah, her resume I do think is a lot more impressive than Talia Santos. I mean, you're talking about Valentina Shevchenko, someone who's right there in competition for being one of the greatest female fighters of all time. I mean, she's fought Amanda Nunes twice, pretty much the only woman to beat her. Amanda Nunes is also just naturally a bigger female fighter than Valentina. Just want to say that. But I mean, Valentina has wins over Holly Holm, Juliana Pena, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Jessica I, Liz Carmouche, Kaylin Terchakian, Jennifer Maya, Jessica Andrade, Lauren Murphy. Nick, I just named a lot of former champions right there, or even you got the current champion, Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes in there, and then as well as, like I said, then former champs, Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. So, and title challengers as well, like Kaylin Terchakian. She's just been there, and Holly Holm, another former champ. She's just been in there and has fought with the best of the best when it comes to the female athletes. While Talia Santos, she has 10 impressive KOs on her resume, but a lot of those all of them happen actually outside the UFC. I'm a little afraid that maybe the UFC is pushing Talia Santos a little too soon. As you can see, yeah, she is a fighter that came off Dana White's Contender Series back in 2018. And then her UFC debut at UFC Fight Night 144, she had a split decision loss. So again, you could argue maybe she should have had that win and could be technically undefeated in the UFC right now. But again, that is her loss, and she's racked up 4 wins. But again, they've all been decision wins up until Joanne Wood getting that submission rear naked choke. That being said, that questions a lot of her opponents that she's had before the UFC. She's been on a tear, getting a lot of first round KOs, TKOs, and submissions. And then once she makes it to the UFC, she experiences her first loss, and then she's struggling finishing people. Besides, again, Joanne Wood getting that submission. That being said, she's already struggled finishing the fighter she has, and now she's already being thrown in with one of the greatest of all time, who's already gone against and beaten many of those female fighters I just referenced earlier. That's what I think separates the two. I think the experience and level of competition and just that championship mentality Valentina's coming in with. It'd be crazy to see, it'd be awesome to see, almost like a Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes type of deal where Talia Santos just comes in and knocks her out right there on the spot. That'd be cool because that can happen. Every fighter does have that has that fighter's chance. But that being said, the experience, Talia Santos is ranked number 4, but again, that just tells me the level of competition within the division. That's why I think she's already getting this opportunity. I think if this was a different division, or even just another, maybe even the males division, just in general, it wouldn't be as fast of a push for her. Again, granted that the level of competition she's fought and being, I think it's just Valentina needs to fight someone. That's pretty much what it needs to come down to. I would personally like to see Valentina fight Amanda Nunes again, or just someone else who just really, at this point, it's just fighting Valentina itself is the challenge, not just obtaining that title. It's just, fighting Valentina itself, just getting a win over her, whether the belt is on the line or not, is, something to be extremely proud of. But again, Valentina is just so far beyond, and it's going to be hard for me not to side with Valentina on this. She's pretty much like the female George St. Pierre. She's just extremely well-rounded. She has phenomenal strikes, great takedowns. I don't think anything Talia is going to bring at her is going to really threaten her.
Yeah, the only thing I could think Talia should really lean on, in my opinion, would be potentially the takedown opportunity. She's got an 86% takedown accuracy, which is pretty impressive considering she has fought 6 times in the UFC. So it's not like she's just fought once or twice and was able to get 4 or 5 takedowns. It seems to be relatively consistent that she is able to get her opponents to the ground. But that being said, I mean, Shevchenko isn't unfamiliar with being on the ground. She has a 2.62 takedown average per 15 minutes herself. So I could see this going to the ground as well. But in which case, Santos does average a higher submission attempt rate. So it would be fascinating to see if Santos could scramble to try and get Shevchenko in a quick submission spot. But really, in any other situation this fight plays out in my mind, it lands with Shevchenko being the decisive winner. I might even be eager enough to say that this fight would be ended by Shevchenko in the first 3.5 rounds. Obviously, this being a 5-round championship fight, I think Shevchenko has the ability to end this early. She knocked out Jessica Andrade in the second round. She's knocked out Caitlin Chikagian, in the first minute of the third round. So give me under 3.5 rounds on this fight. I think Shevchenko takes care of business.
Oh yeah, Nick, without a doubt. Shevchenko has proven finishing power against proven former world champs. I have to agree with you. I don't know if this fight's going to be a long one. So there you guys have it. Both Nick and I for Valentina Shevchenko. All right, Nick. Now for the main event of UFC 275. It is for the light heavyweight strap. We have the champion, the defending champ, Glover Teixeira, versus the quick uprising star, Jiri Prochazka. Glover Teixeira, he's coming off a tear. He's coming off a win beating the former champ Jan Blachowicz, while Jiri Prochazka, he's only been in the UFC since 2020. He's being former title challenger Volkan Ozdemir and former title challenger, which many argue should have been the champion, Dominic Reyes. He defeated them both in the second round. Volkan Ozdemir, crazy KO, and a crazy KO against Dominic Reyes with the spinning elbow. This is going to be a fun one. Everyone knows Glover Teixeira is hard to put out, and he has a lot of heart. This is the second time he's challenged for the UFC title. He challenged over a decade ago, and it didn't go his way. But he's had challenges. He's fought who's who in the UFC division. He's fought former champs, and he's seen the big names. That being said, it's that thing where I see the champ right now is the underdog at plus 162, and this new star coming up, only 2 fights in the UFC, and he's the betting favorite at minus 210. Nick, this is going to be an exciting one. I'm excited to see this young up and coming star challenge a UFC vet.
Without a doubt, Jose, I think it's pretty crazy. You don't often see a guy join the UFC and in 2 fights, 1 fight each year, make it to challenging for the belt of that division. It kind of really just goes to show the hype he must have had going into it, as he did not come from the Contender Series or anything. He started out straight away in the UFC fighting the title challenger Volkan Ozdemir and won in the second round, like you mentioned. Very impressive. He's shown in both of his fights against top level opponents that he will fight and duke it out with 7.19 strikes landed per minute. He just puts out the volume, and he sure absorbs it as well. He's a real tough guy, and 6.8 strikes absorbed per minute is no joke. So I don't really foresee there being a chance that Jiri gets put out by Glover. I think Glover's main chance and main strategy here is going to be definitely to take this to the ground. It's very clear that in his wins against Robertson, Ion Cutelaba, Thiago Santos, and of course the former the former champion Jan Blachowicz, he's beaten them, 3 of them by rear naked choke, and one of them with the arm triangle. I clearly think there's a trend to where Glover is definitely not losing anything in his chin, but he definitely doesn't have the ability to stand up and knock someone out, especially in this light heavyweight division. So to me, it's going to be a tale of Jiri coming out fast and throwing all the strikes he can to try and get Glover early, and it's going to be up to Jiri to keep his stance close and not get reckless. As we saw earlier yesterday, we see guys' stances getting reckless. They get taken down, and they get, like it was Askar Mazarov. He was fighting, and he got a little reckless. He got taken down, and he quickly got elbowed into submission. It was brutal. And I think the same thing could potentially happen to Jiri here if he doesn't keep his stance close and fear the takedown from Glover. We don't have any experience with Jiri really being on the ground against a formidable opponent or a formidable submission artist. Dominic Reyes did land 1 takedown, but got less than 30 seconds control time. And obviously it didn't stay on the ground for very long as Jiri got back up and got the spinning elbow knockout. So the one thing that would fear me from Jiri's side is what is he going to do in the situations where it will be in the clinch, it could be on the ground, and what's Jiri going to be able to do when Glover's going for those submission attempts?
Yeah, Nick, I agree. Glover's a tough one to begin with. He's just such a veteran. He's been through it all. This is definitely going to be Jerry's, I think, toughest match, at least on paper. A lot, there's a lot of factors of why Jerry, I think, looks like the more attractive betting option. No question, he's a huge favorite. I mean, first of all, Glover's 13 years older than him, and Yuri Prochazka is just overall bigger. I mean, obviously they're both 205, but Glover is 6'2", Yuri's 6'3". Yuri has a 4-inch reach advantage, and he also has a 2.5 leg reach advantage. I think the striking, he's definitely going to let loose on the feet, standing up. I definitely know that he's going to feel comfortable and try to find his jab, create range and distance. And then, he's going to be bouncing around and getting comfortable and getting loose like he did against Dominic Reyes. When he gets going, he gets real comfortable. He falls in a rhythm. But that's, he needs to know, like, if he's going to put out Glover, he has to do it quick. He needs to have that knockout power like Anthony Rumble Johnson. Like, it's just that rare knockout power, like Francis Ngannou, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Derek Lewis, where one hit, it's lights out. I don't know yet if Yuri really has that KO power. Glover can take a lot of damage. We've seen John Jones, we've seen Kudalaba, Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos be close to putting him away, but they couldn't. And he's gone on to win some of those matches as well. Most recently, the Thiago Santos fight, where Thiago Santos looked like he was going to come in and just lights out, but as always, Glover just somehow comes back from the dead, weathers the storm, and then when he gets his hands on you, he just grapples you and wants to strangle you. Back in the day when Glover first burst into the scene, a lot of people said that he reminded them of Chuck Liddell. He was a black belt jiu-jitsu grappler, but he had strong KO power. Glover Teixeira, he himself does have that one hit power himself. He has not utilized it as much because back then he was a big jiu-jitsu guy with KO power. And as he's aged over time, his fighting IQ has gone up. And now instead of using his grappling to kind of hold people down and try to put them out, he's kind of gone almost vice versa. It's the reverse, the opposite now. He tries to use his punching to set him up for grappling exchanges and to get a hold of you and go for the submission. He knows that he probably can't put people out with one hit as much as he used to now. So now he's just really using his striking to set up for the takedown and to look for a submission win. Or even just ground and pound you from there. So this is going to be a fun one. Yeah, Jerry, a scary guy, Nick. I'm really excited about this fight.
No doubt about it. In the end, I think I'm going to be leaning here on Jerry's side of things. I think without a doubt that 4-inch reach advantage you mentioned earlier is going to be one of the more important factors in this fight. If he can use that jab, that long arm and long leg kick advantage to keep the distance, I think he might be able to control how this fight turns out. And that age difference too, it's really hard. I mean, Teixeira could be in the best shape of his life, but is that the same shape that Jiri's in? It's really hard to say who's going to win this conditioning side of it when it gets to the fourth, fifth round potentially. But in the end, you make a good point. I think if Jiri's going to get a knockout, it's going to have to be quick. I don't think he's going to be able to just slowly soften up Glover's head and then get a knockout, in the later third or fourth round. I think it's going to have to be quick, or Jiri's going to be in for a long, grueling fight that may or may not just end up going to decision. But in any case, I'm going to lean with Jiri. I think his output is going to be consistent, even if it has to go to the third, fourth, and fifth championship rounds. I think his output will stay consistent. I think his conditioning will be top tier. And I think to a certain degree, Glover will be overwhelmed with all the shots he's taking. And I'm not sure he's going to be able to make that clean transition to the mat. So give me Jiri. I'll take the favorite minus 210. I'm going to stay away from making any direct bets on the over-under for the rounds, I think, because to me there are many outcomes in which it ends before 3.5 and after. So I'm going to leave that apart. I'm just going to put my money down on Jiri and most likely have him in a parlay as well.
Yeah, Nick, I like that bet a lot. For this one, yeah, this is going to be my underdog of the week. It is going to be Glover Teixeira, the champion. I'm going to put some respect behind that name. He has that proven track record. Yuri, he still has a lot to prove, and he's been two big names, but maybe he's been pushed himself a little too soon as well. And if it's Glover, I think whoever does win this match, ultimately, it's whoever implements their game plan the best. Glover, he may want to just hold Jiri down and ground and pound him and go for the submission. And I think Jiri, he's going to have to implement his game plan of establishing that jab. He has 100% takedown accuracy, but Glover has pretty good takedown defense. And even if Jiri does take him down, Glover's not going to be worried if he's on his back during the fight. There comes that jiu-jitsu black belt experience. I am going to go with the former champ. He is older, and he still does have a chin. He's been knocked out, but he does have the chin, and it's hard to deny the champ after seeing him. And I in the past have thought he was going to be out, and he's just proven me wrong. And it's one of those things where I can't go against Glover now after seeing him come back. But I truly understand why Jiri's the favorite. But again, I need to see a little more besides this Glover Teixeira fight to really see where I think of how good Jiri Prochazka really is. So I'm gonna go with the underdog this week. I'm gonna go with the defending champ Glover Teixeira. I think he's gonna beat. I don't know if this fight's gonna make it to the final 5 rounds. I kind of see him winning in similar fashion as he has in the past, weathering a storm, looking like he's gonna be put out, and coming in and surprising the world via ground and pound or submission. So there you have it. I have Glover Teixeira.
All right, looks like Jose and I are going to disagree on a couple of fights this week, which is always good. And we'll see who ends up getting them right this week. But yeah, I'm definitely sticking with Jiri. And welcome to the betting portion of UFC 275, brought to you by Moneyline MMA. Before we get into the thick of things, please remember to follow us on Twitter at Moneyline MMA. Subscribe to us on YouTube at the same location, Moneyline MMA. And feel free to give us some feedback as well in the comments or on Twitter regarding your thoughts and any advice you may have moving forward for us to continue bringing the best product forward possible. That being said, let's get into it. Last week, I had a perfect week. Pulled off the 6-leg parlay. All 3 low, medium, and high-level parlays hit, including the best lock and the underdog of the week. We are going to continue bringing that momentum and that energy forward into the next pay-per-view on June 11th this weekend. Starting with one of our best bets. I know this is one that Jose and I actually disagreed on, so we're going to leave it up to the viewers to see which side you guys are taking here. But we're going to offer Jack Della Maddalena by KO. It's currently a little early to find the specific winning props on most books. Maddalena is a minus 162 favorite at this time. I'm thinking you could find that about plus 180 when it comes out. Jose and I both are pretty big on Kape, but not quite sold on whether or not he's going to get that full knockout versus Bontorin. So we're going to avoid that individual betting, but it will certainly show up on the parlay. One of our next best bets of the week is going to be Zhang Weili. That's obviously one that Jose and I agreed on. And to be specific, we think she's going to win this one by points. And I think we're going to be able to find that at about plus 150, because currently Weili is a minus 184 favorite to win that fight. So keep your eye on the books and see if you can get on that early line when they come out with the win by decision bets. Weili by points. Another lock pick of the week is going to be Schevchenko by KO. Don't get us wrong. Taila Santos is a formidable opponent, but the both of us think she still has some time to really gain some of that high-end experience that Shevchenko has. And we're just not really sure Santos is going to be able to make it 25 minutes with the undisputed, I guess, Amanda Nunes, but otherwise the undisputed women's MMA GOAT. So take Shevchenko by KO while you can. I mean, she's a minus 720 favorite, so I highly doubt you're going to get any crazy odds on that KO pick. But, even if you can find it at minus 150, minus 200 when those books bring it up, I think that's a great bet to make. Um, it's not something I would parlay with. I really don't like to parlay uh, picks where you try and bet on the way the fight ends. I just want to pick the winner in general when it comes to parlay. So I would heavily advise against parlaying Shevchenko by KO with anything, unless it was one of the more guaranteed things in your mind and you wanted to do maybe a two-leg parlay or something. But in most cases, just go Shevchenko by KO as a single bet, and just know that money should be coming back to you, and if not, either way, that's a phenomenal bet to make. But that being said, considering Jose and I disagreed on the main event, we're not going to have a lock for that fight. Obviously, it could go either way. They're both top tier fighters. No matter how experienced and old Glover might be, he will be a big threat to Jiri in the octagon. And I don't think either of us are comfortable with putting a bet in the best locks category with that fight. But that being said, let's move down to the parlays for this week. This is one of the opportunities to make the most money by putting a little bit of money down. Like I said last week, I got something like a plus 1,300 return on my 6-leg parlay. Not going to get quite so crazy this card because there's just not as much that I'm really confident in winning. But for our first 3-leg parlay this week, we're gonna go with Kape plus Shevchenko plus Weili. I think everybody can agree those are the most three solid, almost guaranteed fights. You can get that 3-leg parlay on FanDuel at plus 147. Pretty good money back for a bet that if it doesn't win, something crazy happened. I'm going to go with the medium parlay next, and we're going to add Kape plus Shevchenko plus Weili, and then we're going to add Brendan Allen, excuse me. Look, that's not a fight we were able to discuss. Jose and I were kind of hoping they would put that fight on the main card, and it ended up being the headliner of the prelims for UFC 275. But don't get me wrong, that will be a banger of a fight. Malkoun is a up-and-coming fighter with a 6-1 record, I believe, and Brendan Allen has a little bit more experience. Maybe not the one-loss record, but he's 18-5 right now. But he has much more experience, and Malkoun is almost solely dependent on his ability to get fighters to the ground and dominate control time and grapple time, which I think he will very much so struggle to do that against Brendan Allen. So I'm going to go ahead and put Brandon Allen in for this medium leg parlay to make it 4-leg. You can get that at plus 242 on FanDuel. And if you're feeling a little risky, you want to put a couple bucks down on a higher risk parlay, let's combine Kape plus Shevchenko plus Weili plus Brendan Allen, and let's add the title belt challenger for the light heavyweight division. I know Jose and I did not agree on this fight in the end, but we both agreed that in terms of the heavy, the high risk parlay, when we're looking to really dig deep and get a parlay that's got great returns, but also has a great chance of hitting, it really does come down to putting Jiri on there, because as much of a threat as Teixeira provides, he does seem to kind of rely on that grappling aspect of things. And I'm not saying by any means that Glover is one-sided of a fighter, but there's a reason Jiri is minus 210 on the sports books for this fight. And I think it's very safe to say that 5-leg parlay at plus 405 on FanDuel is a great bet to make. And I can guarantee you myself, I'll be putting a couple bucks down on that. But personally, I'm a little bit more confident in the lower legs of this parlay, like the first one I mentioned, just beating Kape, Schevchenko plus Weili at plus 147. So those are our parlays for this week. I know Jose mentioned his underdog of the week being Glover. I, surprisingly, for the first time since we've really started digging deep with this, don't have an underdog of the week. I am taking just about all 5 favorites on this card. And when I had looked back at that at first, I was thinking something's wrong. Almost never do all the favorites win in a 5-fight card. But this is just one of those situations where I see it playing out that way, and I'm not going to go against my gut just because I'm picking 5 favorites. That's not what I'm about. I'm picking who I think is going to win, and I'm very confident in those picks. So I do not have a best underdog, but I will go ahead. I mean, I've said it week in and week out. When it comes to picking the best lock of our podcast, we heavily avoid just picking the most favored fighter. That's something that even in most, the favorite doesn't always win, but we here at Moneyline MMA don't want to just take the easiest route. We're looking to dig deep and find the fights to win you guys some money. And in this case, our best bet is going to lie on Manel Kape. He is also a relatively heavy favorite, but is no means as big of a favorite as Schevchenko, who is likely a guaranteed win, but we're going to avoid putting her on the best lock just for that consistency of not having the highest favorite so we can continue to win these best locks. I believe we only have one loss. We're 5-1 now. And like I mentioned last week, completely ran the table and got an undefeated record in our bets. So again, please remember to follow us at Twitter. We will be posting our final bets on Twitter mere hours before the fights begin. And keep in mind that if anything on that Twitter post is slightly off from what's discussed in this podcast, just keep in mind that this is being recorded a week in advance. Things do change in the coming week before the fight, especially when it comes to a pay-per-view. These fighters have a lot going on in the media week ahead of the fight, and a lot of stuff comes out that you might not have realized in the before this week comes up. So just keep that in mind. If any of the bets I list today are different on that tweet, feel free to reply and ask questions about why picks may have changed, but there will always be a reason for that. And it will almost always be in relation to news, articles, or any other information that came out since we recorded. So thanks again for listening. If you made it this far, please ring the bell for our notifications on YouTube. We will continue to post every week ahead of the fights that UFC is putting on Saturdays. And I believe there are fights coming up for the next 8 straight weeks or so, going all the way through July. So we've got plenty of work, plenty of fun coming up for you guys. And again, please feel free to give us feedback if you have any of that. Otherwise, have a great week, and we'll be looking forward to Saturday.